always feel really weird about the intro, and I'm like, there are people that I am talking to, but none of them are here. Right?
Just do the intro. It's okay.
Hello, and welcome back to The Roll Report. I am your host, Colin. I use he and they pronouns, and I run these shenanigans, and we are here with another episode of Classin' Up the Joint. That is the part of the show where we ask wonderful people inane questions. I am joined by another fabulous guest that I'm extremely excited to speak with. Fabulous guest, will you please introduce yourself?
I suppose since I'm so fabulous, I can introduce myself. I'm Angela Lammie. I usually go by Andrew online on different platforms. I am a GM as well as a community owner. So I own Little Cord, which is not just a Discord server where there's tons of games that are going on all the time, but also I have recently started publishing stuff, which includes Mimic Nomicon, which we're going to talk about a bit today.
Yeah. We're going to talk about many things, but yes, Mimic Nomicon is one of them that I am extremely excited to talk about because I feel like everybody loves or loves to hate mimics.
It's one or both.
I don't know that there's middle ground. I don't know many people that are like, mimics, feel pretty neutral about those, could take them or leave them. Everyone's like very into it, or they're like, no, let me tell you about this time my GM decided that a key was going to turn into a mimic that we really needed.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think... Let me start as I have with several people in the past. How did you get started in I want to say in like role playing games, and either I guess maybe a two-part question of like when did you start playing and when did you start creating?
Okay. So I first started role-playing. I did text role-play. I guess you could say it's the GM-less RPG, if you really wanted to say. I started doing text role-play when I was like 7, so I got into that really early, and I would write a bunch of stuff and make books and force my parents to listen to me say them out loud. And
they are our best critics and our first audiences.
Yes, I wasted so many printer pages making and printing out the content for them. So yeah, I started doing that, and I did that for over a decade. And then in COVID, good old pandemic, my friends were like, you should do D&D and try it out. And I was like, but I just, that's rules. No. I was like, I just want to roleplay and like do the content and write whatever I want. And they're like, no, you'll like it. It's fine. So they convinced me. They first had me go into Magic, play Magic the Gathering to like sneak me into the nerdiest side that way. And then got me to play D&D.
It's a nice like gateway nerdery, you know?
Yep.
There's cards, you collect them.
It's like correlates.
Yeah.
Yep. So they got me into Magic, and they're like, we created a monster. Okay, hi, D&D. So I got thrown into D&D in like 2020, towards the very end of it, pretty much. And I started playing. I got really into it. My server, Little Cord at the time, was not a D&D server. And it started to blow up where other people were like, but D&D, let's do it. And so like 2.5 months after its creation, it started getting D&D in Little Cord. Wow. And it just like exploded, and it's obviously became our niche now. So I got into GMing roughly like 6 months after I started playing. So I got into it pretty quickly because I knew that I liked to write and create stuff already. And so I got into GMing right after in like the summer of 2021. So it was just boom, after one another.
I mean, I think very similarly, like COVID was a big, I want to see my friends, but it's very difficult to just stare at a screen aimlessly for hours. But when we're all doing this role play together and creating this world together, it becomes much more tolerable.
Yeah.
How long did it take to kind of go from like, oh, I like doing this, I'm kind of good at it, doing it for my friends, to like, no, I'm gonna do this because people tell me I'm really good at it and I can make some sort of a living off of it? Because if I'm remembering rightly, I think some portion of your creative endeavors are also in pro GMing.
Yeah, I do pro GMing. That is something I gotten into more recently. So I do have like kind of like a testimony, I guess you could say, for pro GMing, because I started out and I felt like I was good, and I got compliments from people like, "Oh, this is your first time. I would have never known that you were a GM." And since I was using Little Cord, my own server, to do those things, we have GM reviews where you can the players can leave feedback for the GMs, and that way it's like anonymously sent and paraphrased to them so that they can get those critiques and grow as a GM, but also find out what they're doing really good at and everything. So it's really great, and also a great way for me to make sure that I don't need to remove a GM from the server.
Yes.
So
yes.
Through that, I had my players go ahead and give me tons of feedback, and constantly they gave me like really intensive feedback. And so I just kept going off of it and improving. And I started to feel good about it, but I was like, pro GMing, I don't want to get paid for it. Like, that's weird. I don't know. Like, I don't really feel good about that idea. And that's a common debate that people have. But it wasn't until I got asked to be a GM for Global Press at Gen Con last year, that I did it, and I was like, oh, this is scary, but sure, I'll do it. Why not? Because that's really cool. I did it, and I got huge compliments from all of my players, like very nice. And even I have like one of my SPG Start Playing Games reviews is from one of those players who's like, I played at Gen Con, and I've been playing for forever and GMing, and she made it fun to play again, and blah blah blah. And it was so cute because it was
I love that.
I was intimidated at first because it's like, oh, one of the parties I got, which is what they were part of, was this older group of men who were like, oh, we've been playing since like the start of D&D. And I was like, oh, that's not nerve-wracking for baby GM me. But it's okay. We're just going to have fun, and I'm sure it's going to be great. And they all loved it, and they loved me. And I've even had some of them contact me now, like, are you going to be at Gen Con again? Because I want you as my GM. So all of that together kind of just gave me this aha moment of like, wait, I could like actually do this in more of a sense, because they came forward to me and privately were messaging me and saying like, hey, do you actually do any of your paid games? Because you could charge for your games if you wanted to. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I kind of just used that as a kicking off point.
I mean, I love hearing that, because I think my own bias when I hear about a group of men who've been playing since first edition is to assume that they are part of the contingent vocally outraged at like less racism and sexism in the new rule sets and in the new lore, and instead it's people that seem like they were that. They're not all like that. No, I really love hearing that so much. And I will try to think better of the people that I mentally associate with loud outrage about the modernization of D&D. Amazing. And so what did Little Cord start as, if it did not start as a D&D group? Because again, as I've interacted with it, I see this like really wonderful, thriving community that you've built, and seems to have grown very organically as well. And I'm going to say, I guess, the last 3.5 years.
3 years, yeah.
3 years.
It was created March 21st of 2021.
I love that you know that right off the top of your head.
Well, we do anniversary stuff every year, so we do fun little events, and we'll have our server artists give discounts for some of their art and whatnot. But I originally had a thing called Little Serve, which is what it started out as. Little comes from not people thinking like littles is in like the little community. Sure. It instead came from my friend and I, where we were just gonna create like a group of, we were gonna be like a duet on Twitch, where we were doing all this gaming stuff together, because she wanted to get into it, but I knew all that stuff, but she had no idea how to do it. So I was like, oh, well, let's create, a unique username so we can do this. And so we came up with little in front of our names. I used a persona at the time, which was Evelyn, due to life stuff that happened.
Sure.
And so online I wanted a different presence. So I went by Little Evelyn, and she went by Little Peach. So that's what we were to start out with. And so I originally created Little Serve, which was like the community base for us. And I eventually had people bring up D&D into that server.
Right.
And it killed the server. It killed the server.
It can do that sometimes.
I tried it, and it just it killed the server. And it was just, when you have a niche and then you try to do other stuff and it kind of just fizzles out. Yeah. That's what happened to it. And so I was like, I'll just make a new server, and it's just going to be a gaming VC server. And so I made Little Cord. People brought up D&D again. And I was like, okay, if you really want D&D, I'm going to run an event. And if you actually want to do it, you have to show up to the event.
Yeah.
And so we did it. And even though I had this little server to start out with 50 to 70 people to start out, I mean, that's little to me in compared to some others. So
sure,
that might be big for some people, but I had 26 people show up to the event, which is huge for a small little server at a set time. So I had 26 people show up and participate, and we watched Joe Cat for how to, Joe Cat's guide for her thing. And so we were watching the crap guide to D&D and teaching people how to play. So that's what we did as an event. And then it kind of kicked off. And since I was like, all right, guys, I can't have this server die again just because of D&D.
Yeah.
I started to, because I'm very organizational, I do project management generally for day-to-day things. And I just came up with some procedures to start out with. And from there, we kind of just continued to grow organically. Like you said, I've had a few times where I've, done some paid marketing, but otherwise it's been very organic. And now we're approaching the 1,600 member mark. We're getting there.
Amazing. Well, and
So,
I want to commend you for being willing to do D&D again after it murdered one server and going all right, you guys want it. So I'm so happy people showed up and servers continue to grow. So I want to jump over to Mimiclandia for a moment, and we're going to talk more about the book a little bit later. But I guess can you where did that start? Because I feel like my sense has been there is an ongoing release of new creative content, of new mimics designed around specific objects, and kind of this whole body of work around the idea. And I think I want where did that come from, and where is it going?
Yeah. So Mimicnomicon is the anthology. So kind of taking from, Necronomicon and all the other icon, and taking that, suffix and saying, okay, but what if mimics, and making an anthology of those mimics, specifically of, 5e stats. I would like to go into I've already talked to some other creators for other systems for eventuals, but right now it's kind of sticking with 5e because that's the main base and kind of where mimics even came to be, really. So I was
gonna say, I feel like they're very classic D&D creatures, but so just the idea is so good that the shape changing object, I feel like it is represented in most, I don't know about most, many other RPGs.
Yeah. It's definitely getting used and abused.
Yeah.
So I've always thought mimics were cool, as part of that group that I was ooh, mimics, that was fun. That's a cool idea. You never know what could be a thing. Like my mouse right here, I can get. There goes my hand.
Lose a couple fingers before you know it. You're just trying to like get on the computer.
And so I always liked that, but I was really disappointed when I started GMing and I was like, why is there just like the Mimic stat block and it's like nothing special about it? Like it's just the Mimic and like
it
there's
looks
nothing
like whatever. It's just got a mouth and a tongue and a cloud. Always like is depicted as a treasure chest sort of thing.
Yeah, it's usually always that chest or the door, like the very common things, and there's not really a lot of flexibility with it, and the stats don't make it interesting, in my opinion.
I agree, and also like quickly past, I want to say like a party past like level 5 or 6 is just not a challenge anymore at its base stat.
No, it's not. So, there's people who have created mimics and other things. I think of some people that we might be working with later in the future that have made some of those. So I won't say who they are, but
sure.
There's a lot of people who have made different types of mimics and really added that oomph to it.
Right.
But there's never been really a set supplement, a set 5e supplement or supplements that actually do something more with it. I've seen people try to do it, where I've seen some people, they take more of the roleplay aspect of it and kind of like how you can use it for the hunting and how they hunt prey and other things. But I haven't really seen a lot that actually plays with the stat blocks and plays with those ideas. So we took that and we kind of exploded off of it. So when I was at Gen Con, I met one of the other Kobold Press mods because I'm their lead mod on their Discord. I met one of the other mods and I was like, hey, let's just meet up because we're both here. Why not? And so we started talking, absolutely loved getting to connect with them more. And I brought up my idea about Mimicnomicon and they loved it. And so that was Garrett. And then Garrett was like, oh, I have a friend who we got to work with and try to like, because she's a writer and they are an editor as well. And they're super into this stuff. So we missed each other. I wasn't able to meet Hannah, but they ended up trading our cards. So Garrett was like our little messenger who traded our business cards with each other so we could contact each other afterwards. And from there, we ended up creating our group and working on it, and we really liked it, and we've been just working with one another. So essentially Mimicnomicon, and I'll be able to put the link in there for you, which is littlecore.com/Mimicnomicon. It's the anthology of unique mimics that populate a host of settings. So you could do it anywhere from the super medieval side all the way to modern and beyond. That is our phrasing. So medieval to modern and beyond. So you can kind of take it anywhere you would like to, because the stat blocks are made in a way where, okay, even if it's, say, for example, we have a microwave mimic. I'll use that as an example. We present you with options of a little note on the bottom of, hey, here's some other things that you could transform it into as a GM and pretty much keep the stat block. We'll give you some adjustments if, it would make more sense. Like, oh, they can't do this thing that is an electric thing if they don't have electricity in a medieval setting. So instead they do this. So we kind of give you that right away. So it doesn't matter what you're running it in for genre and setting, but you can still use it. All of the mimics have a special little thing, or they have a specialized form. So this is what allows them to transform and get those special stat blocks. So by base, they would have that base mimic, D&D 5e SRD, that have that stat. But if they end up having a specialized form, they can turn into that specific thing and are really, really good at that specific object. Is kind of how that works.
Cool. And briefly, since we're going to dig into it in the second half, tell me about Mimiclandia and coming out, the Mimiclandia adventure.
Yeah, so we try to pretty much every other month release something, but we haven't been releasing a lot since February because we've been spending our time and we decided to take extra time to work on June. So with the purpose of it being Pride Month, we wanted to go ahead and release a closet packet, which has now kind of turned into a closet and boutiques thing.
Yes. Can't leave the boutiques out of it.
And so it's kind of like, you can put it wherever you want. Again, you can adjust it because they all come with a concealed and revealed description on there as well, so that you can easily kind of do that. But they work in a host of ways. And so we're putting a lot of time into that. So we wanted to kind of release this closet packet that has a lot of clothing and other things you would find in a closet that are really fun.
Is there a giant like beehive wig?
Well, you see,
the
wig is actually, so I'll spoil some stuff just for you.
Little tiny spoilers. Thank you.
Yeah. So the wig is actually the one that I created. So yeah, this is actually, we've gone from it being like a closet packet to more of a boutique, just so it's more applicable to more settings. But I did create the wig, and I was like, but listen, okay, we have to give our good old, no, like all of our drag queens, I have to give some love to them. So Maddie Morphosis and her fucking lion of a wig, I was like, guys, I'm gonna have to figure out a way that this thing can get big. Like, I have to. And so it does have a content warning with my wig, I will say, which is hair loss. So with a lot of our stuff, we kind of go outside of the realm of just mimics or hunters, you know. They all have, instead they get, they have a purpose and things that they do and care about, and they're all made differently, which we'll get into in a second with Mimiclandia. My wig, essentially, again, trigger warning, hair loss for anyone who's watching, but essentially it has the ability to it likes to connect with, it's called unconditional love. So like play on words, because everything is puns. It's a special feature that it has. So essentially, I'll read it word for word. I just pulled it up. It might have some edits before it goes out, but the mimic can bond with the humanoid creature experiencing hair loss through any means, whether intentional or unintentional. And the wig mimic feels the need to aid the humanoid. If the bond is accepted, then it will transform into any hairstyle, color, texture, etc. that the humanoid would wish, providing services as a familiar and an accessory. And so it has this thing, so it has this pilius inside of it that it will, on its attack stuff, it will take hair from people. But it uses this to like feed and get different hair options, colors, and styles to create the different wigs. And so
I
it'll
love this
have like
so much.
Yeah, it'll bond with one specific humanoid, and if for some reason the humanoid that's bonded with it decides to stop wearing it, the mimic refuses to bond with another humanoid, and it tries to, in this very creepy but loving way, use its stored hair to create flowers, miniatures, and other items of endearment in an attempt to win back its bonded.
It's like so cutely codependent.
Yes, and so it like follows you around indefinitely. But well, at least until it finds another creature in need of a wig, really. But it's there as this thing where like that's its whole purpose is wigs, people who are losing their hair, whether they mean to or not, I want to like just latch on and I want to give them whatever they want, and make them happy is what they do. So, yes, if you wanted a huge beehive wig, it would be able to do that.
I mean, it just, the image was just there for a moment of like almost Marge Simpson, like a huge beehive with like little eyeballs and like a tongue popping out somewhere,
Yeah, so the description currently, it's probably going to change. This is when it goes to attack, because it can make gosh. Okay, sorry. It's called the helicopter for its ability. So it makes these pigtails that act like, and it allows it to fly. So it's pretty great.
Just the mimic, or like the mimic and the humanoid it's attached to just starts hovering?
No, this is like before, if it's gonna get but I mean that I appreciate you bringing that up, because I'll make sure to put that in there as like hey, we need to address if it's attacked to a thing.
Hey, what's its strength score, right? It could spin its hair propellers fast enough.
It's got a 17, so it's up there.
At least with like a small humanoid, right?
It
bonds to a bald halfling
pretty heavily.
And hair hanging is a time-honored circus act. Like people, you braid a like metal loop into your hair and then suspend yourself and swing around on it.
Yes. And so there's all the other fun stuff and things that are with that. But that's kind of what we're doing with a lot of our creatures in there, where mimics have kind of like more of an additional purpose, or you can use it for more roleplay related things. So say depending how dark your game is, say something happens and your player's losing hair for some reason, you can introduce the wig mimic, and it could be like a really wholesome thing between your character and being able to experience that part of your identity again. So
it is. And I feel like we're going to talk about some of the identity and the things and like how well timed this will be in the second half of our show. And I'm going to turn us to the truly, truly important questions.
Oh boy.
Truly important.
Okay.
Starting with, what is your favorite character class or classes?
Okay. I love to roleplay. So I'm good with whatever, as long as I have a character to go with. So I'm down for whatever. However, I do have a tendency to enjoy bards, because I can do more face with them, whether it is, on the darker side or the lighter side, anything in between. But I've also had I've had a liking for clerics and paladins recently, where, especially if it's like a life cleric. I have this one precious character. Her name's Melanie Dewlight. She's a furbolg.
Starting from an adorable name and a light. Yeah.
She's like the furbolg that looks like a spotted cow that's a vitiligo and everything. So, her whole thing is she's older, because furbolgs live for a really long time.
Right.
And in that campaign that I had her set for, there's a lot of wars that have been going on and they haven't stopped. And she just wants to help people and guide them through the forest and help them be okay. She doesn't have any, will about whatever. She's just nature. She's a cleric druid. And so she ended up going ahead, because druids aren't allowed to have like metal. So to give her heavy armor, instead, those soldiers that she wasn't able to help out with, or that she found their bodies, she would give them a proper burial, and she would use their bones to add it to her armor, is how we designed it. So she had bone armor.
That's really cool.
And she would do that because she had the hope of one day they will finally see peace, which would be whenever that ends. And she can take them there for whenever that happens, so that they don't die in vain. So she keeps them on her body that way. So
the flavoring of that is so lovely. And and just the idea of this like peaceful and genuinely kind and nice spotted cow looking furbolg wandering this ward ravaged countryside trying to help people. It's like and I think you are the first person to say cleric. I have a specific note of not cleric.
Wow.
Back that was Damsels in Dice Dress. Lyndon was like specifically not cleric. Uh, and I guess what I want to poke at a little bit is like I too appreciate the sort of I'm down for whatever if I have a character and like if I have kind of good people to play off of and you know I'll fill out party balance however but like that in this moment it sounds kind of that bard, cleric, and paladins are the things that have both captured the most of your attention right now for whatever reason and like and well I mean bards sounded like that might really be the overall long running favorite. I don't know. Not gonna put words in your mouth, but that was the sound.
Maybe, but I was pulling up my characters and I was trying to compare like what I have. I do have a lot of bards, but they're done differently. Like I have a bard that I'm looking at right now who's one of the first bards I made. And she's a College of Glamour bard. And she's very, like, uppity. I called her an upper class valley girl, is what I called her. And her whole backstory deals with being part of the Phyland family from Waterdeep. And she would essentially be there to do the dirty work of blackmailing people, is what she would do, and get information.
But with like a really nice, glamorous smile.
Oh, she's gorgeous. I'll send you the art so you can
yes. Oh, I
show
love
her
it.
beauty here, as well as DC Ryan for the artist. So
definitely.
Go commission him, please.
Yes. No, send me art and the things. We will do everything we can to get them out there.
Yes. So I have her who, you know, she's like a very like she'll talk and she'll talk and she'll be flirtatious and fun and blah blah blah, and she has a damp your husband and you know all fun stuff. And then I have another one that I just looked at who is Beatrix Graves, who's kind of like if you could take a witch doctor and play it down a bit more. She is just very dark, and everything she does was flourished to be the opposite. And so, you know, like I made her College of Whispers, and we reflavored a lot of her spells to be very like dark everything. And I can send you art of that as well. That's something I just found online though. But I have like the total opposites, and it just allows you to play with different things because there's a lot of subclass options with Bard.
And even like, you know, at the macro level, I think this is a really good example of how many different ways you can flavor the high charisma and like what it is they're doing from sort of gregarious, flirtatious blackmailer.
Yes,
you know,
to intimidation and don't worry, I got this type of vibes, but not in the, oh no, I'm dumb and I can do whatever, it don't matter.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I, you know, what we've on the show, we've had stories of the dad bard whose bardic inspiration is like the dad jam band and is not very good at it. But like the bardic power relies on sort of like being so pathetic that everyone else praises them just to prevent a meltdown.
I want to make Groovy, which is a Warforged bard that's just a music box, essentially, of just the going around boombox.
It's like the jukebox as a character.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do.
I mean, I love bards for this as well, and I feel like this is a thing that has been brought up a number of times, just like the sheer versatility of the mechanics and how it lets you customize your character and like really lean very hard in so many different directions. Yeah, big fan of bards. Yeah. I think clerics are really cool. I'm going to go ahead and say it. And I understand, I feel like what happens to many people when they encounter a cleric is the unspoken or perhaps religious spoken out loud. Well, religious trauma. And I was going to say, honestly, it's the unspoken or overt, you're the heal bot. Like you don't get to do damage and like cast fun spells. You just have to like keep healing people over and over again. But it's not, it doesn't have to be, right?
No, it doesn't. One of my beefiest a most damaging character who was also the tank was literally Cortana, who's Warforged cleric, Forge cleric, because when you combine those, you get a 21 AC really quickly.
Yep.
And so she was 21 AC, and she just did a lot of damage stuff. She wasn't necessarily like created to heal. She's there to protect and do damage. So you don't have to heal. Like, cool, she had a few things where she'll heal if need be, but she's like, nah, you're fine.
Yeah. No, it seems fine. Yeah. Here, heal. Have a word. That's what you get. The rest of I'm saving my action economy for more important things.
Exactly. I mean, I had Mama Lachey, who was a half orc barbarian. And she was a healer too. She wasn't just damage. Because we reflavored a tattoo, like one of the tattoo magic items, to when she like punches someone, because she's like trying to like get them ready and to look nice and proper. As a proper mom would, she instead heals them. So even though she's really aggressive with it, just because she's larger, they're fine. They get healing. So.
I love that. The healer barbarian. There's like this little flavor of the mercy monk as well. Like, no, I'm gonna punch you because you deserve it, and it's gonna make you feel better. Don't worry.
You'll feel better in no time.
Yeah.
Oh my God, hi, you're listening to us. Thanks. I hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, if you could leave us a 5-star rating or review on the podcast platform that you prefer, it would give me, and I'm sure all of us, a massive dopamine hit. And it helps spread the word about our amazing show that we're all having so much fun doing. If you could follow us on social media, we're at The Roll Report Cast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and that's it. And if you really like us and or you have all the money in the world, like some of our Bay Area friends do, you could support us at patreon.com/The Roll Report. Now back to the show.
And paladins, like, I love me some paladins.
Yeah.
You hit so hard so early, and then depending on subclass, not even depending on subclass, you just get this whole wonderful wave of smites and interesting spells to add flavor to the character. And I think with both paladin and cleric, you bring in the supernatural right away. You have to bring in the relationship with the deities.
Yeah. And it's fun because it doesn't even have to be something that's like on the religious side necessarily, you know. It can just be like, I follow these values, and so I kind of like am akin to this, and so I work alongside of, I want to follow this deity and kind of like their values, but not necessarily in like the same fashion that a cleric works. And I even just had recently in a campaign one of my paladins who recently just walked away from like all of what she believed in after some emotional damage that happened.
Sure.
And she's now an oath breaker currently, as she's without an oath, and she has to re-find her way. And so it's really interesting to do that. But you know, I've played rogues too, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, I had a rogue who doesn't speak, and she just does sign language instead, to stay as quiet as possible, but also she uses different masks to show her expression to people.
That's
so,
amazing.
Like, that was a really fun one because I would keep my camera on for anything that was online for that character, and I wouldn't do sign language necessarily, but you know, I'd like do different things and like show like, oh, like come here, you know, or you know, to have to like mimic to people, hey, this is what she's trying to express. And she's a beaut of a seer. I pissed off some GMs with that character before because at level 3 I already had her at like a 23 passive perception. So it's just fun.
Like observant and nice ability scores early on. Oh, yeah.
And because she was a scout rogue, so it's just expertise on expertise.
I think it's one of my favorite things to do to DMs, and sometimes my least favorite thing is as a DM of like, no, you can't slip anything by this character. They're gonna see it all. In a home game that wrapped in December last year, one of my players was a rogue shadow monk who, until I took it away from him narratively, had a robe of eyes as well. So it's like, oh no, I have a over 20 passive perception. I'm gonna roll above a 20 on most of my active rolls, and I can see in every direction 120 feet into the ethereal plane and see invisible things.
I love that.
It's the question I think then becomes, what do you do when you inevitably see the thing? Because that character was like, oh, I see the thing, then I need to run away because I can't hit it very hard, and I need the other people to hit it very hard, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always the ways for the GMs to balance it. As difficult as it may be.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I had where I saw things, but I was one of the first people that went into a thing, and I got hit with, can't remember what they are. I'll eventually remember, but I got hit with a thing that pretty much made me blind and essentially paralyzed in a way because I was grappled and like held down. And so the other players just came in with no idea what was going on. And I was like...
And they look down on the ground and there's your silent rogue friend just flailing around. But the willingness or the like sticking to the character's guns enough to not make noise at that point. Or if I interpreted the character correctly, it's that they are capable of speech and noise, but choose not to.
Yep.
And to commit to that bit, even in this moment of like, well, I'm blind and paralyzed on the floor, and I'm gonna still just not even go whatever sort of noise. Amazing.
The
move.
GM took full advantage of that moment, and I was like,
oh yeah,
nope, she's still not gonna talk. Sorry. Like,
the rest of the party
guys.
just walks in casually, like, wait a minute, something's missing here.
Yeah, it makes for really fun moments like that. So that's why, even if it seems like really frustrating sometimes, it makes for really fun moments. Yeah, and that was a fight I hold dear to my heart and remember, which says a lot because I don't always remember fights that happened.
I especially 4 years in of GMing and running many games and I hope playing many games. I didn't ask, do you have the curse of the forever GM?
No, I run 7 games,
Good job.
I play in 2, so I have a total of 9 games. I play in one-shots too.
Yeah. Do you have 7 like ongoing campaigns through Start Playing or something else, and home games? I would hope at least 1 or 2 for pure pleasure.
Yeah, I have currently 1 SPG play by post that just started, and then I have. Currently, I have an after-school game that I do, so I run games for kids, and cool. So I have that. That's about to finish next week, though. And so right after that one finishes, I have another online one that's about to start, but that one's in Little Cord. So those are my free games on Little Cord. And then I have an IRL one, and then I have 1, 2... Sorry, counting.
I was at that point.
Yeah, I have 2 other free online games that I do in Little Cord other than those. Mm-hmm. And then I have 2 paid games that are campaigns right now. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like where it sits. I
also wouldn't say like that is so generous to Little Cord and to the community that you've built that like, I don't know, to be like, yes, Kobold Press has asked me to GM Gen Con, and I have amazing paid games, and people give me amazing feedback all the time, and I'm still going to make sure that I run games on my server for free for the people that have showed up. And And that, I don't know. That's amazing. There was a time I was running 7 games, but it was like peak COVID when I was doing literally nothing else except playing D&D all day, or at least 3 hours, like 6 out of 7 days of the week, I think. Yeah. Man.
I have a lot of every other week games, so that helps.
Yes.
So it doesn't feel as bulked down. But yeah, I do, I have my free games, because some of them I've had before I started doing paid games too. Because a lot of my campaigns are, you're going to go for at least a couple years probably.
Oh yeah.
That's actually how I met my fiance.
Cute.
He was a player in one of my first ever campaign that I ever ran as a
wow.
GM. And I ran it on Little Cord. And so
that makes me really want to ask your fiance how has Angela grown as a GM in the 3+ years?
Hey,
oh wait.
Oh, you're so cute.
Oh.
You and your drawing shit. I love it. Okay, come here. They have a question. I know you have your stuff. You're ready to go grill. They can't see you. You're blocked. How have I grown as a GM since the first time? You want to answer?
I mean, grown enough to put a ring on it,
Gotten better at tolerating my bullshit.
Oh, wow. High praise. High praise. For sure.
They said high praise. He's gonna go grow. We're having brats tonight.
Wonderful. That's so good.
There you go. Good enough. I could deal with this bullshit. There you go.
Hey, what is a relationship beyond two people that can deal with each other's bullshit? Really?
Yep.
And the specific type of bullshit. My partner and I have a theory that an unspoken love language, along with touch and affirmation and gifts and words and things, mild harassment.
Yep.
It
always exists.
For us, usually more physical, like they try to put their fingers in my nose and I frequently try to poke them in a spot that may or may not be ticklish just for fun,
Yep.
But our mild harassment matches and meets each other's very well.
Yeah. He constantly threatens me with, if you kill my character off, I will bring this type of a character to the game. So
that sounds like a real threat.
It definitely is, because he's like, I'm gonna bring out my Yooper dwarf who's a smith, and I got my 6-pack. Just I love it.
I feel happy that I even know that reference slightly from American Gods. That's for Upper Peninsula, right?
Yeah,
like Upper.
My family. I have a bunch of Yoopers in my family, so.
Yeah, love that. So I want to wrench us back a little bit and get into the subclasses. The I'm gonna assume multiple, at least a couple again, but are there specific subclasses? And I think not even which ones have you played the most, but just what do you like the most? What are the ones that for an unreasonable or illogical reason you're like that? Purple Dragon Knight.
Gloomstalker Ranger is amazing. Just disappear. Yep. Do I need to say more? You just kind of out of existence, and it's so good. Especially when Ranger is not always great, to say the least. Especially if they're not doing revised. And so, if you do the revised with Gloomstalker, it's it goes, which is nice. So I really like that one. That's probably a personal favorite. Yeah.
It's funny, Rangers come up a couple times in the last 2 or 3 interviews as worthy of more love than it gets, and I have come around to this side. So I'll say it again. I think for me, one of the biggest things about Rangers is that to get the most out of playing one requires a campaign over a one-shot, I think, and a DM who's willing to work with you so your favored foe and favored terrain are relevant.
Yep.
or let you change them. A DM, a friend of mine, has started a new home game running. He wants to get all the cool tech and like the new virtual tabletop boards that connect to Foundry and move your minis around and stuff. And just is running like the Planescape out of the box module that came out with the book.
Okay.
But he was like, okay, if you're going to be a ranger, anytime you level up, you can change your terrain and foe. I was like, fantastic. That's all
that's
I
cool.
needed to make and it'll make it so much more relevant. Gloomstalkers are so fun.
Yeah.
They're so fun and they hit really hard and can like they're a really good sort of rogue-esque, but having magic and having these other cool things that you can do. Yeah.
That's probably what I would definitely say, because it's like, cool, I play different subclasses, but they're generally I use them for roleplay purposes.
Sure.
Is how I play a lot of my characters. I don't care about the min-maxy stuff, but that's probably the only one where I generally am like, mechanics are nice. Because out of everything that I've played, it's just it just goes differently. And it's so fun when you're in a campaign and you just suddenly zilch out of existence for everyone else. And you're like, but I'm standing right here, guys. Like, come on. That's probably what I would say is favorite subclass.
Yeah. I'm curious then if that one seems both roleplay and mechanic, is there one that is solely the roleplay of it that grabs you? We can totally leave it at Gloomstalker, but I feel like I'm curious if it also sounds like your approach to building characters generally starts character first, class and mechanics and abilities later.
Yeah. I like receiving the world and kind of the setting and what's the campaign's hopefully going to be like, and then I'll come up with an idea for this is the type of character I'd want to play. I think it'd be really interesting. I want to give the GM opportunities to play with my backstory and play with those things. And then I kind of say, okay, what works best with what I'm hoping to accomplish? And then I kind of like put them together, or I might ask the GM like, hey, I found this random homebrew thing that's not super overpowered that I'd love for me to have, not for like min-maxy reasons, just for working for the character. Like I'm an ice tiefling for a campaign, so it's really cool. But it goes into a whole backstory thing. And that was a fun thing that we got to play with. But in terms of roleplay aspects, obviously I have to give props to Bard, because there's ample opportunities, but I wouldn't say there's a specific subclass of that that really like gives those opportunities. I think some of them that give the best opportunities are the ones that are actually not usually a face of the party, which is interesting because they allow you to do different things. So I would say anything that is actually a druid subclass.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I've had multiple moments where I've played a druid and I was able to be the socially awkward, anxiety-ridden character that's like, but nature, not people. And I'm able to come out of my shell by doing the simple things of, my little druid doesn't want to talk with people, but she wants to let you know that she feels connected with you. So she does a little druid craft and she makes a little flower for you, those little things that just, it works so well mechanically for the character that you don't really have to think hard about how to role play it out.
Yes.
And so I think druid's one of those things, because it's like, hey, literally nature, here, I made animal companion. They're yours now.
I summoned all these really awesome things, and
I'm going to protect you by doing this, you know?
Yeah.
It's just, it's fun to play with. I mean, you can have a very charismatic druid, you can, but I feel like that adds even more to it of just like,
Yeah.
I care for you so much that the things that I'm bonded with the most, I'm going to give to you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I love the way that many of the classes, but Druidcraft especially is one of those spells that you looking at rules as written, it seems so limited, but it's like there's no reason to not allow it to create flowers and create plant life and to create these moments exactly as you're saying. I have a Spores Druid in a campaign, and another time it could get into how I'm displeased at the way they nerfed some of the abilities from Unearthed Arcana to what became rules as written for 5e. But like, I'm just always like, well, I'm going to grow some mushrooms for people because that's my thing. And there's, my DM was never, I felt very confident my DM would never be like, no, you can't do that. It says you cause existing plants to blossom. And I'm like, no. And they have also let me grow daily amounts of black truffles and psilocybin to sell to people to fund our party.
I love that.
we had at some point we had to like look up. There was a solid 10 minutes of a session that was Googling the price of black truffles and trying to come up with equivalent amount of gold pieces.
The things that we have Googled as D&D players could get us on a list. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like then at that point with our favorites established, now's when I'm going to say, if you want to hear the rest of our fabulous interview and talk more about Mimiclandia and the Mimicnomicon, you should support The Roll Report on Patreon, patreon.com/The Roll Report. And for as little as whatever amount, you'll get all of our fabulous episodes of Classing Up the Joint unedited. Yeah, I know, right? Some of them stretch a little bit long. I am learning still the skills of wrangling an interview with a cast of 5 people and how to like how do we keep this to an hour without making an insane editing puzzle?
Yeah.
But yes, support the Roll Report on Patreon. You can hear everything else. Mwahaha. Angela, thank you so much for joining me to class up this joint.
Yes.
I feel like the joint has been well and truly classed.
Yes.
Where can people find you on the interwebs if they would like to?
Like I said, I usually go by Andrew or _Andrew on most socials. So Instagram, I call it Twixter instead of X or Twitter, so it gets called Twixter instead. And then, I obviously have Discord, so you can always join the Discord, and I'm pretty active generally on there. Start playing. Yeah, I mean, the socials,
all the places.
Yeah.
And we'll put we'll put links. Oh my God. People keep or Instagram keeps telling me people on Threads want to know what I have to say, and I'm like, do they? Do they really, or is that just language you're using, right?
Yeah.
We will put links to all of those things in the show notes and links to Coming Out of Mimiclandia, which I'm not going to announce a release date because this will in theory be out on June 15th, and hopefully it'll be, or whatever, was it June 15th? Yes.
Yeah, it'll
no,
be
12th.
Yeah, June 12th is
Numbers.
when your episode was going out, but it'll be out somewhere in between there. We'll figure it out when we get closer.
It'll be out June for Pride Month, and you should check it out because it's amazing. And go join some of Angela's games because, as we have heard, Kobold Press GM and highly rated and lots of good feedback. So go do the thing. Always. This is why we're here. We want to play more games with more people. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.